So they talked a little bit about Tucker Carlson, and I wanted to listen to Dave and Joe here talk about the same thing.
Did you see the Tucker Carlson interview on Full Send? Yes, I saw. I didn't watch the entire thing, but I saw a few clips of it when he's talked about how much he regrets supporting the war in Iraq. That's what you're referring to. Yeah. And I believe him. I think he really means it. I believe him too.
So this is great because just listen.
Sometimes there's people there's John McCain types who go or Hillary Clinton, they'll admit, okay, it was a mistake, but then they still support every subsequent war after that. And they know it doesn't see. Whereas Tucker is like, I'm so ashamed that I supported this. I'll never forgive myself for it, and has opposed every subsequent war after that. And I'm like, okay, I think this guy really believes it.
He's different than people want to pretend he is. First of all, the guy was a deadhead.
Yeah.
You know that? He's the
I did not know this.
So for sure dropped acid.
That'd be my guess.
How else can you enjoy the music?
I think it's legally required that you've taken acid at least once if you're going to enjoy the Grateful Dead. I'm not sure. I don't know. I haven't brushed up on the statutes.
Live to LSD, according to my friends who've been there and done that.
It's really interesting what the public perception of Tucker Carlson is, or particularly how polarizing he is to people that it's almost like they're describing a different person than he actually is.
Right.
I really think he was the most interesting person in cable news, the most thoughtful, most intelligent. Like he was really I don't agree with him on anything. On my podcast, we used to do a segment where I had just done it so many times that we started joking about it being a segment that we called Contra Carlson, because I was just disagreeing with him. Like he had all these economic ideas that I completely disagree with. And I disagree with a lot of stuff he said, but he was like such the lone voice in really the corporate press who was completely opposed to the military industrial complex, completely opposed to big pharma and all of the COVID insanity. It was really good on speaking up about a lot of really important issues that you would think a good leftist would at least appreciate that he's good on that issue, you know? And some of them did. This is what he's the guy who's having Glenn Greenwald on his show. You know what I mean? He's the guy who's having Aaron Mattei and Jimmy Dore.
Yes.
These aren't right wingers. He's having he's having them.
A lot of left wingers.
And it was.
So I wanted to show you that before I go off about your boy, Kyle Kulinski, because this whole thing with Tucker, there's a lot of nuance behind it. And Kyle's definitely not digging into any of that nuance. He's definitely hammering the MSNBC partisan line that the media world. So he goes in, Kyle does this bit where he plays this clip of Bill O'Reilly, of all people, drunk and bloated Bill O'Reilly. And you can hear it in his voice that he's drunk and bloated. And just, the stuff you would expect of Bill O'Reilly, the belligerent, dinosaur of Fox past, the ghost of Fox past, if you want to call it that. Tucker has dominated for a long time because he does these dynamic reports, and he has, just like Dave Smith just said, he has people like Jimmy Dore and Glenn Greenwald, people who are doing real reporting. But listen to Kyle's take on the Tucker firing and this whole Bill O'Reilly thing.
Of this channel might not know this, but Bill O'Reilly dominated cable news for a very, very long. He was the number one show for 20 years. In fact, when he went out, he was the number one show. But I believe it was, what was it? The sexual harassment allegations that got out? No, they came out way earlier.
So even before Me Too, Bill O'Reilly, I think the woman's name was Andrea Macris. And if I remember correctly, Stephen Colbert used to hammer on him about it all the time, but he basically left these dirty voicemails on this girl's voicemail, and she used it to kind of bribe him. He was trying to bang her. And the reality is, later on, Matt Lauer and, Charlie Rose and Harvey Weinstein, everyone else was busted for the same type of behavior at work because people are, close to who they work with, and people want to fuck. Like, that's how life works. But the fact that Kyle digs up this dinosaur's opinion of what's going on is great. Listen,
There was that whole lying scandal, but I think he survived that for years too, where he was caught telling blatant, brazen lies about, his career as a so-called journalist. But he was ousted when he was number one. He's still definitely sour about that.
Howard Stern used to have this clip of Bill O'Reilly. I should have dug it up. It's so funny. He's like, "We'll do it live. Fuck it, we'll do it live." Let me see if I can find it. I might actually even have it on this computer. Here, I'll look for that while you're listening to Kyle.
That's fact. This is a man who holds a grudge. Well, he went on a show here to discuss Tucker Carlson now being axed from that position. And I love the ornery grandpa vibes here.
Obviously.
He takes these like snide little pot shots and snubs Tucker, but he also gives us some really good insight here as well. So here's Bill O'Reilly, former number one on Fox News, going after the current number one or recent former number one, Tucker Carlson. Listen to this.
What an incredible news day, John, with Tucker Carlson leaving Fox, gone, and Don Lemon. And joining us now is the mega best-selling author, of course, the host of Common Sense on WABC every night, 9 to 10. And you hear him, of course, on Sid and Friends and elsewhere, the great Bill O'Reilly. Bill, what is your reaction to, earthquakes in the media world today?
Yeah, I'm surprised. I mean, 6 years ago this week that I left Fox.
Just listen to his voice.
Plus years. Factor, the dominant cable news program of all time.
Most dominant cable
6
news
years
program
ago
of all
this week,
time.
not that anybody's counting, that I left Fox News when I was the number one most dominant show of all time on air.
He sounds like a pro wrestler. He's like, most dominant show of all time.
But whatever, man. Oh, I love it. Oh, this is wonderful.
For me, for the first 3 years, his ratings were soft.
Media world today.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I mean, 6 years ago this week that I left Fox News after 20 plus years doing the O'Reilly Factor, the dominant cable news program of all time. Tucker Carlson took over for me. For the first 3 years, his ratings were soft. He lost about 1 million, maybe a little bit more of my audience. And then in 2020, he took a hard right turn, decided to program for very committed conservative people, whereas I wanted a big tent, like WABC wants now. I mean, I wanted conservatives, of course, but I wanted liberals and independents to watch me. Carlson basically...
That's hilarious. By the way, he's kind of right. Like, if you go back and watch old Bill O'Reilly shows, and there's plenty of them on YouTube, he does do the tap dance, right? He does like, I'm not a conservative Republican. I'm a registered independent. And if he has on Republican guests, he will ask them tough questions. And every now and then he'll hit you with a position on an issue that's more moderate. But look, by and large, on 95% of issues, Bill O'Reilly is a committed conservative Republican. He votes conservative Republican down the line, but he played the game, right? He did the act. Now, he's right that Tucker caters to the far right, and it's like...
No, he is not. Kyle, why are you consulting this dinosaur of a man's opinion?
Well, fuck you, Kyle!
Instead of Joe Rogan, or like, you've been on Joe Rogan. I just showed a clip of Dave Smith talking about Tucker Carlson. Have you seen the Full Send podcast, Kyle? Tucker Carlson is not far right. He's not catering to the far right. You just heard Dave Smith say he has more leftists than anyone on cable news. Why is this nuance lost on you, Kyle? Is it because you're hammering talking points for the Democrats? Why are you consulting? Who cares about Bill O'Reilly? Literally, not even conservatives care about Bill O'Reilly. No one was like, hey, I wonder what Bill O'Reilly thinks about Tucker Carlson's firing, except you, Kyle.
Like massively contrarian and is kind of conspiracy brained. But Bill does miss the fact that Tucker actually does a similar version to what Bill O'Reilly used to do, which is every now and then on an issue, he'll buck the orthodoxy on the right, and ultimately,
this is also untrue.
Well, you, Cal.
As Dave Smith just said, since the Iraq War, Tucker Carlson has been against every war, whether Trump supported it. There's also footage of him. He's the one who, this is so wild because a lot of liberals are saying that the reason, and Kyle's saying this actually, that one of the reasons Tucker was fired is because of all these lawsuits that are building, right? Well, one of these lawsuits by this woman is, it says, it's basically saying stuff that is like reality anyway. Like that they had degrading pictures of Nancy Pelosi in a bathing suit in the office. Oh my God, I'm so shocked that they would have some degrading picture of, be joking about Nancy Pelosi.
ultimately, it doesn't matter because he redirects all that energy to support people like Donald Trump, to support standard conservative Republicans. So it's really just posturing more than anything to reach a younger audience. But it worked. So
see, again, this is not true. Kyle will come out here and say, "Oh, Tucker Carlson has secret texts that say he hates Donald Trump." He was critical of Trump, especially when his administration killed Soleimani. He was critical of Trump's involvement in Syria. Tucker Carlson is not a partisan hack like you are, Kyle, or like Keith Olbermann on the extreme. It's unfair of me to compare Kyle to Keith Olbermann because, let's be honest, he's much more. His views are much more up to par with reality than Keith Olbermann, who just screams Russian at everyone from his basement, like you're a Russian. Keith Olbermann literally just sits in his basement and screams you're a Russian at everyone. That's his entire broadcast.
So he's sort of discounting a little bit what Tucker's saying, but or what he's doing, but he is also kind of right that I would say the general thrust of Tucker's show is more contrarian, reaching out to the far right. When he had
No, it's not. When did anti-war become a right thing? And again, the other thing is I disagree with Tucker on stuff. I've done pieces about his obsession with Antifa. Tucker actually said that he thought the Democratic Party controls Antifa. And I mean, when you really look into it, Antifa, that version of Antifa anyway, is just cops dressed in black. So at this point in time, they kind of do because they control the government. But that aside, it's Kyle's ignorance on this subject is mind-blowing to me because it has to be intentional, because I think he knows better than this. Like I just showed you, he was on Joe Rogan, so I know he listens to voices outside of his echo chamber. But let's keep going.
Had a white nationalist as a top producer that was outed versus
another thing, white nationalist is one of those buzzwords that people just use that is to denote racist without any merit whatsoever. So what does that mean? White nationalist. Well, he's a white guy who's a nationalist. What's a nationalist? Someone who believes that probably our money should be spent here in America before we dump it all into Ukraine. Okay, I agree with that. So what has happened is the Frank Luntzes of the world. I don't know if you know who that is, but he's a guy who wrote a book called Words That Work, and he's one of those people who teaches politicians how to use language. So just to give you an example, they used to have this thing called the estate tax, right? And what it was a tax on rich people's estates. It's really whatever, like pay some money. You have the money, rich people. It's like a yacht tax. What Frank Luntz did was he helped these people rename that as the death tax. And now people are against it because it sounds bad. Oh, it's a tax on people that are dead. Oh, that's terrible. Of course I'm against that. Whereas when it's called the estate tax, it sounds like a tax on rich people. So white nationalist is an example of that. Now the Frank Luntzes of the world live in the Democratic Party. So they'll say words like white nationalist as a veiled dog whistle thing to call someone a racist. But what's the reality behind that? Who is that guy really? What do we really know about him? That he's a white nationalist? That's it. It's unserious. I feel bad for you, Kyle.
Is Bill O'Reilly, who maybe did the tap dance a little better. Let's say that. Maybe did the show a little better. Who, me, bro? No, I'm just telling the straight news, bro. Fair and balanced, dog.
Like WABC wants now. I mean, I want it conservative.
See, what's clear to me is that Kyle hasn't seen the Full Send podcast that Tucker did, nor does he have any idea who Tucker Carlson is. His entire opinion of Tucker Carlson is based on shit he hears from people like Bill O'Reilly, who are completely irrelevant in the modern political discourse.
Conservatives, of course, but I wanted liberals and independents to watch me. Carlson basically programmed for a very hard right audience, and these numbers came up.
No, he did not. The reason he was so popular, the reason he had 3 million viewers a night and a lot of Democrats watched him, is because he was the opposite of that. He was not hard right. He was not someone who just spouted Republican talking points. He had people like Glenn Greenwald and Jimmy Dore, and Kyle knows better. You know better, Kyle.
Well, you, Kyle. I don't want to go to your faggot birthday party anyway.
What a sad decline.
Was the second highest.
Kyle's out here citing Bill O'Reilly as a source of valid information on this subject. Come on, Kyle. You know better. Who's a better source on this subject, Dave Smith and Joe Rogan or Bill O'Reilly? You ask yourself that question.
His show Fox next to the 5. But in the past, I'd say 4 or 5 months, his show and every other show on Fox News has lost a considerable amount of.
So I've heard enough of that. Anyway, we don't need to listen to Bill O'Reilly drunk blathering about his beef with Tucker Carlson, a guy who has been irrelevant for 10 years and is still irrelevant. And Kyle's listening to him. It's like the way it works is Kyle is going to, tout Marianne Williamson for the next year and a half. And then eventually Marianne Williamson is going to drop out and they're going to have you vote for this guy.
Let me say this simply and clearly. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by, so you know how we talk about it. Are we the people? Folks, we gotta, it's just, but you gotta, I mean, we gotta reassure, look, my message to everybody I talk to is play the radio, make sure the television, make sure you have the record player on at night, the phone, make sure the kids hear words. I got hairy legs that turn blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight, and then watch the hair come back up again. They look at it. So I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap.
Matt Orfala is an absolute fucking genius. There is none better.